In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus is asked the question, "Which is the greatest commandment?" He answered, "Love God with all of your heart, and with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself." And then again, at the Last Supper, he says the same thing, but with a twist. "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this all people will know that you are my disciples." This time, Jesus replaced your neighbor with one another. This new love that Christ commands of us goes much deeper than the Old Testament commandment he was quoting in Matthew. The people we have been commanded to love has expanded beyond our neighborhoods to include, well, everyone. And this includes people who might make this commandment a bit difficult, like that confrontational coworker who just seems impossible to get along with, or your in-laws who've never treated you like a part of the family, or maybe the person you just met, who you don't even know and really need some help. You see, Jesus knew his physical time on earth was nearing an end. So in this new take on the old commandment, Jesus also made another change. The words "as yourself" became "as I have loved you." Wow, that's a tough act to follow. Christ's sacrificial life provides a clear and concrete example of real and true love. And he put this love on display on a daily basis with his disciples. He was patient with them, speaking kindly and showing great concern for their welfare. He instructed, counseled, and comforted them, prayed with them and for them. He admonished them for wrongdoing, and yet compassionately bore with their failings. And most of all, he gave his life, dying so that they and we might live. According to Jesus, this is how others will know that you are one of his followers, not because you have a shirt or a bumper sticker that says so, not because we announce it from a stage or a blog or a status update, but because they look at you, at how you live, the things you do and say, and they see Jesus. They see love.
Hey, I want to welcome you this morning. If you haven't been hanging out with us for the last couple of weeks, we are in the midst of a series that just to do with what it looks like to follow Jesus. And so, the events that are unfolding in the last couple of weeks, today was laid out a month ago. And it's not lost on me that really, I think there's part of me just wants to read you two verses and say, let's go do it. That's all Jesus did. He didn't extrapolate a bunch. He quoted a couple of verses and then said, here we go. If you have a Bible, or an app, or however you use this, would you open it to John's Gospel, the 13th chapter? And as you're looking, I want us today to focus on what's our brand as Christians? As followers of Jesus, what is he asking of us if we're going to leave our mark? Am I the only one that I've loosely followed the Cracker Barrel whole rebranding thing? I kid you not. I was like, when they announced, if you've not followed it, so Cracker Barrel was going to rebrand from the old man sitting on the porch, same colors, same Cracker Barrel, but take the old man off. It's what it looked like to me, and update the insides, okay? Here's the deal. If you don't like Cracker Barrel, it really doesn't matter to you, but I like Cracker Barrel. And the thing that I rejoiced over was I could care less about the old man on the rocking chair. I don't mean if you love the old man in the rocking chair, that's cool. It just, the thing that mattered to me was the chicken. I don't want them to change the chicken, okay? I love the breakfast menu, all right? And so there was no talk of changing the food, but they were gonna change the brand, the logo, until there was a outlash or, in public. And so my understanding is they've gone back and reverted to the old brand. And as long as the chicken's still good, that's really all I care about, right? And so I think when you talk about what's your brand, You know, we can get that out in culture. We understand, hey, they're known for. That's another way to look at it. What are you known for? What are you known for? What should we be known for? What should the body of Christ be known for? What should be our brand? And it's very easy to have your brand hijacked by circumstances and things outside your control. And we've just got to keep coming back to center that what is it that I want to be known for? What is it that I want the church? What is it that you want to be known for? What people think of you and the mark you're leaving. I came across a guy by the name of John Sutherland who did a TED Talk. John is an officer in London's police department, and he was talking to the TED audience about the forensic science of when people do things, the evidence they leave behind. And you sometimes have to look harder than others, but any crime show, any drama you see, when they put together a case, they're looking at the evidence. What is the trail that's been left behind? And what made his talk stand out was he went and segued into the evidence. What he called it was the evidence that happens when two people collide, that marks get left when we interact with each other. And as he said, sort of in his TED Talk, he said, every time two people come into contact with one another, an exchange takes place. Whether between lifelong friends or passing strangers, we encourage, we ignore, we hold out a hand or we withdraw it. We walk towards someone or we walk away. We bless or we curse. And every single contact leaves a trace. The way that we treat and regard one another matters. It really does matter in life. And he wasn't saying that in the context of being a Christian. He was just trying to say, as human beings, as we're out there interacting with people, and we're rubbing shoulders and we're doing what we do in life, we're leaving a trace. What kind of trace are we leaving? That's one of the things that grieved me as I thought about the conversations I've had with some of you over the last week. What kind of trace have I been leaving? What kind of mark have I been leaving? And I didn't like what I was hearing. And so this morning, Jesus sort of laid it out pretty clear for us. And if you've grown up in church, you're not really going to hear anything new. If you're familiar at all with the church, the words that we're going to look at that Jesus said have been like plastered. I mean, people that are religious and non-religious think that we ought to love one another. Love is like the most prominent thing in our movies, in our music. It's out there. But what's it look like in the body of Christ? Is our love any different than the things that we see and hear? So in John 13, before I get there, if I want to catch you up, you haven't been hanging out with us for a little bit, we just simply said that the disciples, being a follower, they're just ordinary, regular guys. They were fishermen, tax collector. There was a Roman guy who hated Rome. A few guys, and we have no idea what their background was, but Jesus calls this hodgepodge group of guys and just said, that was the invitation, would you follow me? Okay? And we said that a disciple then becomes like a learner, like a follower, like an apprentice of Jesus. That's what I want to become. That's what I hope, if you know him, that's what you want. You just want to get to know Jesus better so you can follow him more closely, all right? So to the disciples now, in John chapter 13 is a story where it starts off and says they've been out and about, and Jesus it's literally like we're in 24 to 36 hours of his death. So this is home stretch, and he knows it. And he's got them together, and they're going to do this thing called the Last Supper, okay? So let me read you what happens here in John chapter 13. We're going to look at the end of the chapter in a moment, but the beginning of the chapter starts that Jesus knew his time had come to leave the world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. It's interesting phraseology by John, but he's simply saying, I think Jesus was like, hey, I've been talking to you guys about what this looks like, and now I'm going to show it. And it's going to be the cross. It's going to culminate in the cross for them and for us. But along the way, they're having this meal, and the evening meal was served, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God, and he was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, he took off his outer clothing, and he wrapped a towel around his waist, and after that he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet. Going to do the Last Supper. Before the Last Supper, their feet needed to be washed because that was just everybody wore Birkenstocks, right? So your feet are dirty from the path, and so here we go. We're going to wash them so that it's like you don't have stinky feet like there while we're all trying to have dinner, okay? He's washing their feet. From there, they celebrate the Last Supper, okay? Jesus, somewhere before I think they start, Judas leaves. I don't think Judas is at the table. And he's with the 11 other guys, and he shares the bread and the cup, and he just says, I'm not going to do this again until the new kingdom. And then after there, they leave and they start the walk to the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, Luke records somewhere, I want you just to get there. You have to get there in your heart. Somewhere after all this, on the way to the garden where Jesus is going to give his life, Luke records in 22 that they begin to argue amongst themselves over who was the best. How? How? Seriously. He just washed your feet. He served you dinner. He's talking about the death that he's, and then on the way, you start arguing with the guy next to you over, are you cooler or are they cooler in Jesus' eyes? Luke 22 says they began to argue amongst themselves over who was the greatest. For the life of Peter, how? Seriously. Okay, John doesn't record the argument. But John picks up Jesus' words then, okay? When he was gone in verse 31 of chapter 13, that's Judas. Judas is left. They've had the meal. They're on the walk. Jesus said, now is the Son of Man to be glorified, and God is going to be glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son in himself and will glorify him at once. My children, I will be with you only a little while longer. You're going to look for me, just as I told you, as I told the Jews, so I tell you now, where I'm going, you can't come. A new command I give to you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. And Simon Peter asked, Lord, where are you going? It's not lost on me. He calls them out. Why are you fighting? What are you arguing about? Let me just remind you one more time that this whole thing is about loving each other. And Peter says, Jesus, where are you going? I don't want to talk about the argument, Jesus. I don't want to talk about loving. I just want to know where you're going. And I'm like, man, except it's just like when you agree that sometimes it just feels that way still today. It's like we're missing the big thing, we're just chewing over stuff that doesn't really matter. And so in this context of Jesus on the way to the cross, he's had the meal with the guys, he's served the guys. Peter said, don't wash my feet. Jesus said, if I don't wash your feet, you're not one with me. Okay. They go on the way there, let's have an argument. I'm better than you are. I'm more holy than you are. Jesus loves me more than you. Whatever it is, because we just, and Jesus says, okay, can we just stop? Can we take a time out? Can we pause? Can I just remind you? Here's a new command that I give to you. You would love one another as I've loved you. So that everyone's going to know you're my followers when you love one another. I think everyone longs to be great. I don't read and hear Jesus condemn them for wanting their lives to be meaningful. I think the challenge is for you and I will always be, how do we define that meaning of greatness? What will greatness look like for you? What will it look like for your life to feel like it's purposeful and meaningful? And there's where I think we run into a lot of dispute. What that looks like. And Jesus said, I just want to remind you of this. It's how you think about your brothers and sisters, how you treat people, as people know that you're one of my followers. Because if you're one of my followers, this is what life should look like. So I'm not trying to get into really deep stuff. I could give you 4 words that the Greeks use for love. At the end of the day, what Jesus was saying, that the love that we should have is not emotional, it's not feeling oriented, it's you really want the best for the person that you're caring about. You really want to see God at work in their life. You really want good things for them. To bless people means that you want their life to go well. And that is so hard. Here's on one hand, it's not hard. See these people over here, my family? I want their life to go well. My son was in town this week from Texas. We spent time with him and his wife. They've got a baby coming. I want their life to go well. You get that. You want those that you care about, for God to bless them, for things to go well in their world. The challenge becomes that Jesus said that we need to love Judas. Jesus said we need to love Judas. I can love my tribe, hands down, no problem. The problem becomes caring and wanting the best sometimes for those that I just don't like, or maybe did me wrong, or I've got critical thoughts of because I just don't respect them. How do I love those people? And if you're hung up on feeling like that the word, as we often connotate it with feelings and emotions, that's going to be hard. Because he's not talking feelings and emotions. I got this little wheel behind me. What does love mean? Love forgives. Love serves. Love prays for its enemies. Love gives generously. Love doesn't quit. Love kind of absorbs things. Love doesn't track wrong. Love is willing to sacrifice itself. Those are all actions. There's not anything emotional up there. And so if I could challenge you to think about one thing, it's like when you think about loving people, and especially people you don't agree with, get the emotional aspect out of it. Like, I can't stand them. Get away from that. What you want is to be able to do good to them in the name of Christ. Why would you do that? Here's the linchpin that you and I need to get our arms around. Why would I be good to people I don't like? I'm just going to ask you. When you're saying, all my life, you've been faithful. All my life, you've been so good. Are you worthy of that? That's not a guilt question. I'm not trying to guilt you into something. I'm trying to ask you, if God's been good to you, is it because you're so cool that's why God's been good to you? Has God been good to you in spite of yourself? In spite of your shortcomings? In spite of your imperfections? Has God been gracious to you? Then he says, whoa, you're beginning to get it. Because that's what Jesus does here. He then takes us and says, he raises the bar. He says, a new command I give to you, that you would love one another as I have loved you. They knew the Old Testament law. They knew that they were to, that's Matthew 22, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And now he changes that to that we're to love one another. He raises the bar. Well, in what way? Before I think Jesus gives this, it's like, hey, I'll pick on Travis. If Travis is good to me, I should be good back to Travis. That's just, we get that. I mean, why would I be mean to somebody who's been good to me? That makes no sense, right? We're in this tribe together. We're both Jewish. Sure, he lives on the wrong side of the tracks, and I live on this side of the tracks, but we're still Jewish, right? We're good Jewish guys. And now Jesus says, I want you to love in the same way that I have loved you. You must love one another. And that's what was new, and that's what was radical. Because Jesus had all sorts of people coming. What was one of the criticisms of him? Jesus, do you know who you're eating with? Have you taken a look at who's at your dinner table? You got some women there that shouldn't be there, Jesus. You're hanging out with some people that just really, we got some serious question marks about your character. In the same way that I have loved you, I'm saying as my follower, you're to love one another. You are to do loving deeds towards. Not necessarily loving feelings, but these loving deeds. And so here's what I've tried to put my arms around. How can I say this week as you and I are out there living life, what does it look like? In what ways has Jesus loved us? I'm going to give you 4. I think love goes first. John 13, when I read you that story, it was, if you remember the Last Supper, they were all sitting there, and there was no servant boy. There should have been a servant boy. Any of you golf? Maybe you golf with, and then like when you get there, my son was telling me that he recently in Dallas had the experience of having a caddy. I've never had a caddy, but I caddied for 2 years. And what a caddy did was every time that club came back, I was like cleaning it off, and I was the guy that go looking for the golf ball that was lost, and I was the guy who pulled the pin, and I put the pin back, and I replaced the divots, and I raked the sand trap. I did everything that the master, the customer wanted, right? Okay, Warman, when they're there at the Last Supper, there should have been a caddy. There should have been somebody there to wash their feet, take their garments. Hey, can I get you a cold drink? Can I help you out? Where do you guys want to sit? That person, for whatever reason, wasn't there. And so we're all looking at each other now. And here's what you're thinking. I'm not touching your feet. I'm not going to do it. I know that the guy was supposed to be here. It's our bad luck. He's not here. But there's no way I'm going to get in that position. And I think Jesus probably gave him about 5, 6, 10 minutes, and then he said, you know what? I'll do it. And he grabs a towel, and he gets the water, and he says, hey, Bartholomew, come on over here, man. And he gets to Peter, and Peter's like, no, you're not washing my feet, Jesus. Love goes first. Love looks out and says, hey, what needs to happen? Love says, how can I be of help? I'll touch on that more in a moment. But I think it starts with when I love the times in the Gospels when I read that Jesus looked up with compassion and he saw, and he did what? He touched a leper. He had meals with people that respectable people wouldn't eat with. Guy wanted to take his life, and Peter takes a sword and whops off his ear. Jesus touched his ear, made him whole again. Love looks for ways to say, I'm going to take the initiative here. So one of the things I might encourage you to think about is, and this is the hardest thing to do, is if you've got a conflict with somebody, are you still waiting for them to call you? If you're at odds with somebody in your family, and maybe you've tried to work it out, I've got that, and I get it. The water's under that bridge, so. But for sometimes it's still sort of fresh. And here's the line of thinking that I've used. They hurt me. They need to come to me. They need to apologize to me. You've heard me tell the story when I was 16 years old. My mom didn't want me driving the car as a new driver to X. So you know what I did? What any smart-thinking 16-year-old male would do. I called Dad. I said, Dad, Mom won't let me drive. And he mumbled something. But here's what I'll never forget. Mom was insisting I wasn't driving, so I took my car keys. Do I still have them? No, I put them on. Took my car keys. I slammed them on the kitchen table. I'm not taking these back till you apologize. And I stormed out the house. I started walking around the block. And I seriously got halfway around my block. And the thought occurs to me at 16. Don't know if you've ever had wise moments at 16. I'm halfway there, and the thought occurs to me, there's no way my mom's apologizing. It ain't going to happen. What have I done? And how do I fix this? Right? So, but, you know, I've been there. I get it. When you feel hurt, the last thing you want to do is take the initiative. And I think one of the things that following Jesus might mean is that we take the initiative. The second thing that I would just ask you to think about, what I think when Jesus is talking about, hey, I want you to love people as I have loved you, looks like it gets dirty. It's messy. I love love when it's easy. I love love when it's romantic. I love love when my wife is buying me gifts. I love it, absolutely, okay? I hate love when it means like we got to have hard conversations. I hate love when it means it's going to be awkward. I don't like loving people when it feels like it's going to be hard. I'd rather just go do something else. Wouldn't you? Jesus got down and he got stinky. There's no other way to say that. He did the job that someone else was supposed to do that no one else wanted to do. And we read in there he did it, as it says here. He got up from the meal, he took off his outer clothing, he wrapped a towel, he began to pour water, he began to wash his feet, and he did that because he wanted to show them the full extent of his love. Love is hard. Caring for people is hard. I'm living by a model right now. I think caring for people is hard, ignoring people is hard, and I would say I get to choose my hard. You get to choose your hard. Which hard do you want to live with? And I want to keep coming back to a hard that does the right thing. As hard as it is. That's what we've got to do. In loving one another. In loving the people that are unlovable. In loving sometimes difficult, hard people. The third thing that I think love does is it helps. It looks for ways. I talked that a moment ago, it goes first, but now I think it's our eyes are up and we're looking for how can I be of real help to people. I had a conversation yesterday with the barista who served me at Dutch Brothers. I don't drink coffee, Patty does. So I'm there buying coffee. And somehow we got just in a conversation. She asked me how my day was. And I said, you know, it's 8:15 in the morning. We're good so far. I said, what time did you start? 6. And you know what, that just led us to a conversation where I asked her what she does, and she's going on, and she's a student at St. Charles Community College, and she's studying physical therapy. And it was just a real brief conversation. But you know what I've tried to do? I've tried to see those that wait on me as real people who have real lives, and maybe is there some way that I can just have exchange with them and acknowledge the humanity instead of just taking my coffee and driving away. You can do that anytime you go to a restaurant. Use their name. Ask them what they do. I've asked people, what do you like about your job? Why are you doing this? Look for ways to be helpful. We've made light of the dish. I've gotten to a spot now where I think emptying the dishwasher is helpful. And as much as I make light of it, I try and do it because I think it's helpful. And I think sometimes we really think it's got to be super hard stuff. It doesn't, to be helpful. You can be helpful in the church. You can serve. See, when I begin to do that, all those things start to combine. I'm helpful, but it's hard. It's time-consuming. Somebody might say something. Somebody might say the wrong thing and hurt my feelings. I might say the wrong thing and hurt someone's feelings, and now how do I deal with that? But I think the opposite of that is just to isolate. And I don't think that's what Christ calls us to do. Love's the proof that we belong. Love's the mark. Christ said it, not me. By this will all men know you're my followers, when you love as I have loved you. And I really believe it sounds goofy, it's not a bumper sticker. It's not your you know what Jesus didn't say? By all men, they'll know that you're my disciples because you got like half the New Testament memorized. Like, you're really good on, like, you just really give a lot. You just, like, you know your theology. Like, he just says, man, when you're helpful with people, when you care about people, when you try and meet needs, when you're willing to sacrifice like I sacrifice for you, that's how people will know. That's the kind of church I want to be a part of. The kind of person I want to be. Don't always get it right. But that's what I think he calls us to. I think those are the people that are making a difference in culture. We, probably anybody who looks at our lives could parse us a couple of different ways. Because we've all got history. And depending on what slice of history someone looked at in your life, it might be really, cool, thumbs up, or it might be like, can you believe they did this? The thing I'm amazed about the love of Christ, for you, he doesn't parse you out. He doesn't come to you and say, do you remember the time? He loves you today. Showed you the full extent of his love. Went to the cross for you and me. Promises to walk with us today. Guide us, strengthen us, give us wisdom, give us courage today. Because that's how much he cares. Because of his great love for us, Paul says in Ephesians 2, because of his great love for us, he made us alive in Christ Jesus. So we're saved by grace, not of anything I got to do. Saved by grace. It's a free gift of God, so that none of us could brag. For God so loved the world that he sent his one and only Son, that whoever would put their trust in him would have eternal life. He took the first step. He did the first deed. And he simply says, hey, will you respond to that? And that's really all I can do. See, I sometimes feel like I'm responsible for your responses. I know I've parented that way. I've looked at my kids and said, hey, how are they turning out? Because people might judge me how they're turning out. So I make decisions based accordingly. Trying to assume responsibility for that stuff. There comes a point where I think what God calls you and I to do, hear me, listen, when they're 2, please stop them from running all over. Okay, that's what you got to do, all right? Just understand it. Then they get to be 32, and I can't be responsible anymore. I've just really got to pull back and say, I got a hard enough time keeping me in check. And if by the grace of God I can do that well and finish well, and that's what you can do, I think that would be a mark that you would leave your kids, that they would be proud of. That the people who know you would say that was his brand. He cared for people. Yeah. He loved people. Team's coming up. C.S. Lewis, in his book, The Four Loves, said this: to love is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will certainly be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure to keep your heart intact, you must give your heart to no one, not even an animal. Think about those who've lost a pet. Wrap it up carefully around your hobbies and your little luxuries. Lock it up safe in the casket or a coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. Instead, it will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. In the end, the goal of the Christian life is that we would love one another. The measure of our maturity is our love for God and our love for others. If we fail in our love, we've missed what it means to be a Christian. We can't love like Jesus without him. But with him, you might be surprised at what flows out of your life. There's a missionary by the name of Ira. She was a missionary in East Africa. When she was home, she was reiterating, telling stories of an interesting thing she witnessed being in East Africa to the churches that she was in contact with here. She told them she noticed how groups of Africans would walk past government hospitals and travel many extra miles to receive medical treatment at the missionary compound. She finally asked a particular group why they walked the extra distance when the same treatments were available at the government clinics? Why did you walk past those hospitals to come to the missionary compound? And the people replied, the medicines may be the same, but the hands are different. I read the story of a guy, a bus driver in Chicago. He got to be on his route, he greeted everybody by name. People would let other buses go by to ride on his bus. That's the virtue of what love looks like. That kind of love makes a difference. Christ has no hands but our hands, no feet but our feet. We are his ambassadors. We represent him to the world. And when we love as he loved us, it makes all the difference. People notice the love of Christ is indispensable.